For a long time in law enforcement, we've always done a really good job of helping our people survive both physically, in other words, defensive tactics and the things that they do to keep them alive on the street. And we've always done a real good job in helping them survive legally when the cases go to court and making sure they operate under the color of law. One of the things that we've not done a very good job on in our profession is taking care of our people emotionally and personally. This is one of those professions that you see the very best and the very worst that human beings have to offer, and they see a lot of tragedy. They see a lot of death. They see a lot of tragic situations, and many times they don't have any kind of a support system to be able to deal with those things appropriately. And what we know from the research is that when people have critical crisis stress that they don't resolve, that it stays with them and generally comes out in inappropriate ways.
The overall goal for peer response in a law enforcement agency is the development of resiliency. Resiliency for the officers and the staff members, and resiliency for the police agency itself. It's very important that we focus on officer safety in the same way we focus on training, equipment, those kinds of things.
The peer program is basically an organized effort for the agency to have a group of people who have special training that will allow us to contact other people in the organization because of the stressors that we go through from a professional standpoint, and also just the basic stressors that we all have in normal everyday life, whether it be marriages or finances or anything. And any of those can impact our work.
When officers get up and they put their uniforms on, they're immediately thought to be someone who has the knowledge and can solve problems. So when someone who is in this profession, they're looked at as being superhuman, as being superheroes, and there are a lot of superheroes in first responders, yet we're human. We have the same feelings, we have the same family issues, the same financial issues. We're constantly dealing with trauma and critical issues and violence and drama. It takes its toll.
People would go through a bad situation and felt like they didn't have anyone to turn to. And so Captain SWEEZY went to the sheriff, and the sheriff came up with this idea with the peer support group. And they felt like they had someone to talk to that was not a supervisor, that it would help them to cope and to deal with it.
I had heard about the Mitchell model, which is the structure that we operate under with our debriefings. I had heard about the model and some of the success with the model, but honestly, in teaching before I came to the sheriff's office, I was made aware of a book by Dr. Kevin Gilmartin. It's called Emotional Survival of Law Enforcement. And it talks about a lot of the things that we deal with that are pretty specific to our profession. And when you start becoming aware of the fact that we lose 3 times the number of officers to suicide than we do to violent criminal assault, it gets your attention. We're missing the mark somewhere in being able to respond to our officers in a way that helps them deal with the things that they deal with every day.
We have to do something up front for prevention and mitigation. And this peer support team has the unique ability to do that. As an embedded clinician, I can do resource referral, I can do some treatment options, I can provide some support, but there is nothing that takes the place of another officer saying to a colleague, I understand, I know where you're coming from, I've been there. So there's no way any clinician can take the place of that peer response, peer support component, which is so important for the success of an officer.
What these peers do is they basically keep their radar up, notice when somebody is acting maybe a little bit different, and will make contact with them and say, I'm noticing that you are acting just a little bit different. Is everything okay? And give them the opportunity in many cases to just talk about it, because a lot of times we don't want the answers given to us. We know what the answer is, or we know that we're going to have to work through it ourselves. But what we really need is just somebody that we can talk to kind of just verbally release that stress many times.
Many officers give up on a career because of cumulative stress, critical incident stress, acute trauma. Those things take people out of their careers, out of their families in some cases, and occasionally lead to suicide or debilitating PTSD.
Peers are very important because we know what each other does. We are doing the same things and we've experienced the same things, and so it's like talking to a friend. And having someone can say, yeah, I know what you're feeling, or let me tell you about this, and maybe offer solutions. But most of the time it's just to be heard. It's just to have a place to go to be heard, to talk about whatever it is, to kind of release it to the universe, so to speak.
As a peer, we respond to people with maybe a problem that they're having a little trouble with. I can't emphasize the confidentiality enough. We also respond to groups that have been or responded to motor vehicle accidents, some sort of sickness or death in the family, and we try to instruct them and show them ways that we can help and help them get through a difficult time that they're having at this point.
I first heard about this through the job. Val LAMBERTI, who is our programs director, and she asked me to be a part of it, and I thought it was a great idea. We all do the same job. We all have the same stressors. We have faced a lot of the same critical incidents here at work, and even at home, you know. Law enforcement face a lot of, you know, long hours, the same stressors at home with family and friends.
I decided to become a peer so that I could help my fellow coworkers. I thought it would be a good idea to get, I know they say don't talk about feelings, but to get your feelings out in the open and maybe have somebody that you feel comfortable talking with, just to kind of vent or, you know, give you a way to vent and make yourself feel a little better.
One of the key points for the peer support group is that any assistance, any type of speaking back and forth is always non-judgmental. It's anonymous, it doesn't go to supervisors, and it's not judgmental. You're speaking to others who have experienced the same thing or something very similar, and they know where you're coming from. It's very comforting.
It's very informal. It's like talking to your best friend. We introduce ourselves if they don't know us, and it's usually one-on-one. There's no rank or formality whatsoever. We're there for them and them alone.
We just sent out a letter and said, anyone interested in being a peer response person, please contact us. And then it went through its stages that we had to pick out what we thought was the best people. And so far we have. I mean, we hadn't lost anyone that first initiated, said, I'm interested, I want to be on this team. I think they've dealt with some of that stuff in their own life, and they want to reach out and touch other people.
Our peer group are phenomenal in that they are people in this profession, in different lines of this profession. Some of them are sworn officers, law enforcement officers. Some of them are support staff. They're kind of all over the gamut. And what they do is they bring together their collective experiences, and most of them have had a critical incident that's caused them issues. And I don't know who said it, but you know, you always look to the people who have been there and made their way back. and those are the people in our profession that they look to trust to kind of help them get their issues in a place to where they can deal with them appropriately and get them in the right place.
The reason I joined the Peer Response Network is I am a career, my career has been in the criminal justice system, and I am someone with long-term recovery with a disease of addiction. And I did not know when I was working that I was using substances that were helping me cope with the trauma of going to work every day, not having anyone to talk to. And so what happened to me is I developed the disease of addiction. And it's very important to me to be able to give hope to other folks and to be able to identify myself in a uniform in the sheriff's office and be safe to say that out loud and not be stigmatized for it.
My life has been affected personally and professionally with suicide. And I think if anything, it's made me more passionate about this program because I have seen what it does to people's lives, the people that are left. And it's, if you can just say a few words to somebody that can make a difference, or just listen, you know, and let them vent and get it out there, sometimes things don't seem quite as bad.
While we initially envisioned the Buncombe County Peer Response Network being something that would be primarily utilized by first responders, and in this case law enforcement personnel in Buncombe County, we quickly discovered that there was a huge regional need. We only have 2 agencies, Buncombe County Sheriff's Office and the State Highway Patrol, that offer any kind of peer support. We often partner with the Highway Patrol to offer peer support interventions. We can offer response interventions such as a debriefing or a defusing.
What the debriefing is about is it's just an open type meeting with all officers that have been involved in any incident that would cause them some distress or discomfort or concern for doing their job. It was a very open meeting. People were able to express their feelings openly without any ridicule, and the team gave everybody plenty of time to express what they want to talk about.
The debriefing starts, we start with a group. We will put them in a circle so everybody's facing. It's not like someone sitting in the front row and someone sitting in the back row. Everybody's got equal footing, equal ground. And then we start by allowing that first person, the first one on the scene, that person to talk first. And then we go through and allow each person to talk as they came up on the scene and what their role was. We find a lot of times it helps, especially in the law enforcement field, for people just to talk. They're not necessarily looking for answers, but when they talk, they get some relief from it.
You kind of rehash the details of the event. You just kind of go in an order of what happened first, and you kind of go through what happened next and what steps did you take. And once you get that together, people kind of see, okay, well, I did do what I was supposed to do, and I wouldn't have done anything differently. I followed it like I should. I did everything that I could do. And so once they rehash the events, and then, you know, the feelings come out, and then they have other people reiterating, well, you did the right thing. So you just go through the order of events. It brings out all the emotion. Then once you do that, you kind of go through and you ask people, well, how did that make you feel, and what were you thinking at that moment? So you just rehash the whole event to go through it step by step.
We brought the team in to debrief on 2 murders, violent murders we had in SWAIN County, and that's out of the ordinary that we have 2 violent murders, let alone a murder in SWAIN County. We had a hostage standoff where a assailant was shooting at us, and within that same week, one of my deputies' sons died. And, you know, there was just a whole lot of pressure in the office. And the benefits to the debriefing was we could see a big change in our officers just about as soon as the briefing was over, because everybody opened up and talked about things that we hadn't been able to sit down as a group and talk about since December of last year. So the benefits are so many, I couldn't name them all.
The benefit I saw from it, from our department, and the benefit I've seen from it, having been on the peer support group and seeing the relief, you can almost see it on a lot of these folks' face. You can kind of tell who's really bothered by it. And of course, usually the agency head or someone in charge will tell you, no, this is a guy we're worried about. And so sitting there, I'm able to watch that person, and we all kind of watch to make sure. And once they're engaged, a lot of times they start off short answers, you know, just a little bit, just a brief, you know, but by the end, they're talking a lot more freely, and you could see the relief come over them.
You know, what we know for law enforcement is we think we're expected just to shove those emotions, to be tough, to be resilient, and you just shove those things down. And we think that we're different than the general population and that we can do that. And the fact of the matter is that we're human like everybody else. And that is not an effective way of dealing with that kind of critical stress. Those things will come back, and they will come back a lot of times in inappropriate activity and behavior and health issues. We know that. It's a medical fact, and we're no different than the general population when it comes to how we need to deal with that stress.
Long-term effects of cumulative stress mean that the officer's family suffers, they suffer. We see symptoms that are very common that can be warning signs: nightmares, night terrors, changes in behavior patterns, loss of interest in usual happy activities, changes in mood and demeanor. And those are the things that a peer responder, peer supporter look for before they develop into full-blown mental illness, PTSD, or physical symptoms. Heart attacks are common. We see people retire and then isolate themselves, and the risk of suicide goes up tremendously for an officer.
Yeah, I had several critical incidents throughout my law enforcement career. It started when I was on patrol. One of the first ones was a house fire that there was 2 children and a grandmother that perished. That I knew the children, I knew the grandmother, I knew the mother of the children who was not there at the time. And it was just devastating to see that. Went on to several other critical incidents throughout my law enforcement career. Was severely injured in a fight that I was in. I broke my tibia and my fibia. Pretty severe injury. They overdosed me on morphine. And yeah, that was a close one. The incidents just kept piling up. And I was always taught to just push it down, suck it up, rub some dirt in it, get over it. And till one day I couldn't push my incidents down anymore. They were in the forefront of my mind. That it was a constant battle.
On November 2nd, I had to leave work to go home and take my husband to receive help because he was talking of dying, didn't want to live, and I had to take action. I had to make a decision that no wife should ever have to make. I feel like if there had been help with our incidents, a peer response thing all along, helping the family, checking the temperature, see what's going on, it wouldn't have been to that point where I had to make the decision to take my husband, get him committed for psychiatric help.
And I never would have thought I would go there. Matter of fact, I told my therapist maybe a week before that, he asked me if I'd had any self-harm thoughts, and I said, God, no. If somebody says I committed suicide, you tell them to investigate it, because that's not me. I love myself too much. And I really believed that. And then a week later, man, I was at the lowest point in my life that I've ever been. And I contemplated that I just couldn't go on no more. This was the end for me. I had to make it quit. I had the images, the bombardment in my mind that I had. I couldn't do it anymore. And so I ended up taking a bottle of sleeping pills and some alcohol.
My husband's incidents were cumulative, one on top of each other. You know, probably before this episode, when he was just out of field training, just starting out on his own, it's probably when his first incident hit, and I knew then that had affected him forever. And it just piled up, and I think if you can't vent a little bit, you can't keep holding stuff in. I think if we've had that all along, we wouldn't have to hide or keep things a secret that we were dealing with.
I was with the Sheriff's Department. I'm over the SWAT team now, but I was on the SWAT team when Sergeant Jeff Hewitt got killed in the line of duty. We responded to the call, officer down, and we did not know that Sergeant Hewitt had passed away until it was over with, and they walked up and said Jeff didn't make it, and we were sort of left on our own to deal with those situations. And it took a while to do that. The SR team, the SWAT team, or the Sheriff's Response team came out. We talked to each other, talked ourselves through it, and that was it. I mean, it was, everybody thinks law enforcement officers are tough at nature, but everyone has their breaking point sometime or somehow they reach that breaking point where they felt like they had no way to release it.
Because the last thing you want to do is traumatize somebody with your trauma that you've had. And I just think the mental health awareness in law enforcement is something that has to go to the next level. We have to move forward and help these officers and their families, because if they are an officer that has a spouse and children, it doesn't just affect the officer, it affects the whole family. I think with what the Peer Response Network is doing, what they're setting up right now is a great asset, not just to the officer, but to the family as well.
And I want to see healthy families, not just good marriages, but great marriages among law enforcement. We have this terrible stigma that if you're in law enforcement, your marriage should be hell, and it don't have to be that way. And I hope me and Tom can represent, put a face on, you can get through these incidents, you can move forward, you can be healthy.
I would tell other agencies, you know, if you have any, if it's a concern for you, you probably need to have somebody come in and debrief you. It brings out emotions in folks that I hadn't saw. It brought our office closer together. It healed some wounds. It bound up some places that need to be bound up, and just made us a tighter group of people.
When I first saw it, they came to me and said, Bill, you're going to be over in the jail portion of it. And I went, oh, it's one of those touchy-feeling things again, until I realized what it was. If we'd had this when I first got into it, I think we wouldn't have lost as many people that ran into a family problem with their spouse or their children. And so far, it's really worked out for us. So.
It's not only fiscally responsible, it's the right thing to do for people that take on this role. And any department that has this creates a stronger bond with each other when they work together, and then they can sit down and share together. The bond that comes from that is incredible.
There is a tremendous amount of synergy that takes place when you have peers taking ownership for a program like this. There's a tremendous amount of savings that comes to the county, the agency, and to the individuals who get support at a crucial time in their careers. This kind of thing should be the standard, not the exception.
When you have an agency that they're responsible for the lives and safety of others, and they're not feeling very safe themselves, or they're not feeling in the best health themselves, it's hard for them to go and take care of others. So if you have an organization like the peer group that comes in and says, if there are things that you need to talk about and you don't feel comfortable going to like LEAP or somebody like that, or a counselor, that there is peers that you can talk to on a one-on-one basis. It's not going to go any further, and it might benefit them and make them feel a little bit better.
Law enforcement as a whole is a very enclosed civilization on its own, and the reason this does work so well is they have their own family trying to help them, and there's no outside interference. That, along with the trust and the confidentiality, we will be very successful at dealing with law enforcement community.
It has worked very well for Buncombe County, and we have used it over and over and made a lot of contacts. I was very surprised at the contacts, the people that have contacted us, but it's amazing what a difference you can make in somebody's life just being a good listener.
The peer support that we have with the Buncombe County Sheriff's Department is the new normal. It's the new normal for our officers. It's the new normal for law enforcement in general. And we believe that this is something that can continue to pay huge dividends for law enforcement.
Now that we're in our second year and we're in the first 6 months of our second year, you know, our contacts are up over 200% of what they were that first year, just over the second year. And the number of debriefings that we've been to and the number of agencies that we've been able to assist just in our surrounding counties has really surprised me in the need that's out there just by us developing this team.
It's the right thing for the right reasons, and it's also very cost effective. I mean, if you look at it as just a bottom line issue, to be able to keep your folks in the game, mentally healthy, because a lot of times when that crisis or when that stress from that crisis starts to affect the individual, their work performance goes down, their interactions with the public go down, their interactions with other family members go down, and just a lot of times the health issues from those unresolved situations will cause them to miss a lot of work. And we all know those are things that cost agencies in ways that we really can't even measure. So I think doing the right thing for the right reasons, because it's what you should do for your people to take care of them. With what you ask them to do, we're putting them in those situations. So we owe them that.